I'm pleased and happy and grateful to be able to share my passion with you all today. A lot of this has come about because of Ken Lux, actually. I remember a few years ago when I was getting into permaculture, he said to me, "Now David, isn't permaculture just another word for sustained agriculture?" And I knew intuitively at that time that there was much, much more to permaculture than sustainability. But at the time in my education, I didn't have the ability to articulate it well. And with Ken, if you didn't defend your position, he challenged you. I mean, anybody else experience that? So, could I have a show of hands? Who has been into permaculture? Okay. And who has a good working knowledge of permaculture? Or at least thinks they do. Okay. Well, that's not my usual crowd. My usual crowd, if I get one hand to say they actually heard the word permaculture, I'm doing good. So this talk is kind of basic. A lot of videos, a lot of pictures, and I think it might be appropriate to have more of a discussion than a lecture. You know, if you want to go deep into something that you're interested in, just shout it out, and let's do it that way. So, I retired about 1.5 years ago from my chiropractic practice of 41 years, and you know, when you retire, those of you who have retired, you get the inevitable question over and over and over again, and it kind of goes like this: well, Doc, now that you're retired, what are you going to do with yourself? I suppose you're going to be on the golf course every day. Now, everybody knew I was an avid golfer, and the woman I was living with at the time said I was pathologically avid. So I think I surprised a lot of people when I said, no, actually I'm going to give up golf. And the questioning got a little more serious then. Well, Doc, just what are you going to do? And I said, well, you know, I've been studying permaculture, and I think I'm going to go back to school, get certified, and become a permaculturist. And the reaction I got was kind of like this. Come on. The old deer in the headlight. We got a lot of deer in Wisconsin. But this picture was taken just outside the Hermitage last year, actually. So, I know what they were thinking. You're going to quit your profession, you're going to quit golf, and you're going to become a hairstylist? Thanks for laughing at my stupid joke. So, I had to give a definition. Permaculture, a design science or system which supplies all our needs and benefits the environment at the same time. A system of design simulating or utilizing the patterns and features observed in natural ecosystems. And the next reaction was my favorite. What the heck did he just say? So, this is what we're going to talk about. Permaculture. What is it? Why do we need it? And what does it look like? Now, when you try to wrap your head around permaculture, it's kind of like blind people describing an elephant by grabbing a body part. If you grab a leg, you'd say, well, an elephant's a lot like a tree. And in permaculture terms, you might say, well, permaculture is all about organic gardening. If you grab the tail, you might say, well, an elephant's like a snake. And in permaculture terms, you might say, well, permaculture is all about making compost and using mulch and compost tea. If you grab an ear, you say, well, an elephant's like a leaf. And in permaculture terms, you might say, well, it's about sustainable energy, alternative energy, solar, wind, zero energy, 0-point energy. So I find it instructive to think of permaculture like a toolbox. And inside the toolbox are all the techniques and things we know about everything. The toolbox is a way of organizing all these things into something that's logical that you can utilize. Now, just a brief history. Permaculture was coined by Bill Mollison in 1972. Does everybody remember what they were doing in 72? I do. I was come to Baba for about a year, and I was in the honeymoon phase, and I was about ready to graduate from chiropractic. I was in the honeymoon phase there too, and I just got married, and I was really in the honeymoon phase, and it lasted a while, about a year and a half. So, does anybody remember the Club of Rome? Yeah. Okay, that's how old you are. Club of Rome was a think tank, and it was made up of ecologists, accountants, scientists, politicians, academia, and they all were studying the state of affairs for the world. And they came up with this position paper called Limits to Growth. Basically, Limits to Growth said we're doomed. We got too much pollution. Climate change is upon us and irreversible. And our soils are deteriorating. We ain't gonna make it. Now, Bill Mollison was a professor at Hobart University in Australia. Sorry, I'm gonna try and get consistent with this here. And he had a student by the name of David Holmgren, and they read this paper and they tried to come up with some solutions to this dilemma. And he coined the term permaculture, permanent culture. And I ran across something from Ward Parks the other day, and he had a definition of culture, which he said, values assimilated into life in all aspects, individually and collectively, which I thought was really nice. So they tried to answer this problem, and after a couple of years, they actually came up with a paper called Permaculture 1 and started teaching classes, and continued on, came up with Permaculture 2, and eventually in 1988, he wrote a book called The Designer's Manual, which is the Bible of permaculture these days. He retired, and he handed over the reins to Jeff Lawton, who's probably the best known permaculturist now, although there are many individuals that are influential leaders in permaculture these days. So, focusing in on design simulating features observed in natural ecosystems. Native Americans called creation and nature the great mystery. Scientists would refer to it as infinite intelligence. If you're religious, you might just say God or Allah, Jehovah. Permaculture has three principles of ethics in which we gauge our behavior, whether it's good for the earth, care of people, and return of surplus. Earth means all living and non-living things, land, water, etc. We all know that everything is living, though. Everything has consciousness. Care of people, to promote health, etc. Return of surplus, think of tithing. And my journey into permaculture started with care of people. Now, in my practice, I found I had two kinds of patients, really. Those who paid and those who didn't. No, another dumb joke. Please laugh. No, I had people that I would call structural problems and other people that I would call physiological problems. Structural problems are, backache, neck ache, arm pain, leg pain, headaches. They all responded very well to conservative chiropractic care. But the people who have physiological problems like heart problems, liver problems, diabetes, didn't respond so well. And I wondered, why is that? And through researching, even though we're the most medicated, most doctored, most operated on, highest technology, richest country, we rank way down there in the industrialized world. Why is that? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but a big reason was nutrition. This is the results of a study that was done in 2004, comparing food from prior to 1950 to food to 1999, and it was compiled by stats from the USDA. And this middle paragraph, or the bottom paragraph there reads, there was iron levels were down 37%, A levels were down 21%, and all 43 vegetable sources that were tested. Now, why is that? I could never get that centered properly. It says, not your mother's strawberries on the top. And the guy, Don Davis, who conducted this, thought that, he said, efforts to breed new varieties of crops that provide greater yield, pest resistance, and climate adaptability have allowed crops to grow bigger and more rapidly, but their ability to manufacture and uptake nutrients has not kept pace. Okay, why is that? This is from the course that I took, and basically Jeff Lawton says we have three problems. Our soil is eroding, our forests are going away, our desertification, and we got too much pollution. And in order of importance, that's a video that I'm not going to show it. Oops. Most important, soil degradation, then deforestation and pollution. And oddly enough, if we would solve the soil degradation and the deforestation, the pollution problem would really much go away. Here's a chart of the dark orange is the really badly degraded areas, the light orange is just bad, and sadly the yellow areas are stable soil. We've got problems. The trouble is the people in our country have no idea the scope of our problems because we're the most opulent society there has ever been. We have no problem getting food, and we think we're getting good food. Now, this point is brought home by this man right here. His name is Alan Savory. Anybody hear of Alan Savory? He's the founder of the Holistic Management Group, and I'm going to let him bring this into sharp focus for you. I give you Alan Savory.
The most massive tsunami, perfect storm is bearing down upon us.
We were going to go through this.
This perfect storm is mounting a grim reality, increasingly grim reality, and we are facing that reality with the full belief that we can solve our problems with technology, and that's very understandable. This perfect storm that we are facing is the result of our rising population, rising towards 10 billion people, land that is turning to desert, and of course, climate change. The most massive tsunami, perfect storm is bearing down upon us. This perfect storm is mounting a grim reality, increasingly grim reality, and we are facing that reality with the full belief that we can solve our problems with technology, and that's very understandable. Now, this perfect storm that we are facing is the result of our rising population, rising towards 10 billion people, land that is turning to desert, and of course, climate change. Now, there's no question about it at all. We will only solve the problem of replacing fossil fuels with technology. But fossil fuels, carbon, coal and gas, are by no means the only thing that is causing climate change. Desertification is a fancy word for land that is turning to desert, and this happens only when we create too much bare ground. There's no other cause. And I intend to focus on most of the world's land that is turning to desert. But I have for you a very simple message that offers more hope than you can imagine. We have environments where humidity is guaranteed throughout the year. On those, it is almost impossible to create vast areas of bare ground, no matter what you do. Nature covers it up so quickly. And we have environments where we have months of humidity followed by months of dryness, and that is where desertification is occurring. Fortunately, with space technology now, we can look at it from space, and when we do, you can see the proportions fairly well. Generally, what you see in green is not desertifying, and what you see in brown is. And these are by far the greatest areas of the Earth. About 2/3, I would guess, of the world is desertifying. I took this picture in the Chihana Desert while 25 millimeters, that's an inch of rain, was falling. Think of it in terms of drums of water, each containing 200 liters. Over 1,000 drums of water fell on every hectare of that land that day. The next day, the land looked like this. Where had that water gone? Some of it ran off as flooding, but most of the water that soaked into the soil simply evaporated out again, exactly as it does in your garden if you leave the soil uncovered. Now, because the fate of water and carbon are tied to soil organic matter, when we damage soils, you give off carbon. Carbon goes back to the atmosphere. Now, we know that desertification is caused by livestock, mostly cattle, sheep and goats, overgrazing the plants, okay, leaving the soil bare and giving off methane. Almost everybody knows this, from Nobel laureates to golf caddies, or was taught it, as I was. Well, I have news for you. We were once just as certain that the world was flat. We were wrong then, and we are wrong again. 50s, and no sooner did we remove the hunting, drum-beating people to protect the animals, then the land began to deteriorate, as you see in this park that we formed. Now, no livestock were involved, but suspecting that we had too many elephants, and over the following years, we shot 40,000 elephants to try to stop the damage. And it got worse, not better. When I came to the United States, I got a shock to find national parks like this one desertifying as badly as anything in Africa. And there'd been no livestock on this land for over 70 years. So I then began looking at all the research plots I could over the whole of the western United States where cattle had been removed to prove that it would stop desertification. But I found the opposite. What we had failed to understand was that these seasonal humidity environments of the world, the soil and the vegetation, developed with very large numbers of grazing animals. And that these grazing animals developed with ferocious pack-hunting predators. Now, the main defense against pack-hunting predators is to get into herds, and the larger the herd, the safer the individuals. Now, large herds dung and urinate all over their own food, and they have to keep moving. And it was that movement that prevented the overgrazing of plants, while the periodic trampling ensured good cover of the soil, as we see where a herd has passed. This picture is a typical seasonal grassland. It has just come through 4 months of rain, and it's now going into 8 months of dry season. And watch the change as it goes into this long dry season. Now, all of that grass you see above ground has to decay biologically before the next growing season. And if it doesn't, the grassland and the soil begin to die. Now, looking at this grassland of ours that has gone dry, what could we do to keep that healthy? And bear in mind, I'm talking of most of the world's land now. Okay? We cannot reduce animal numbers to rest it more without causing desertification and climate change. We cannot burn it without causing desertification and climate change. What are we going to do? There is only one option. I repeat to you, only one option left to climatologists and scientists, and that is to do the unthinkable. and to use livestock, bunched and moving, as a proxy for former herds and predators and mimic nature. There is no other alternative left to mankind. So let's do that. So on this bit of grassland, we'll do it, but just in the foreground. We'll impact it very heavily with cattle to mimic nature, and we've done so, and look at that. All of that grass is now covering the soil as dung, urine, and litter or mulch, as every one of the gardeners amongst you would understand, and that soil is ready to absorb and hold the rain, to store carbon, and to break down methane. And we did that without using fire to damage the soil, and the plants are free to grow. Today, we have young women like this one teaching villagers in Africa how to put their animals together into larger herds, plan their grazing to mimic nature. Let's look at some results. This is land close to land that we manage in Zimbabwe. It has just come through 4 months of very good rains, it got that year, and it's going into the long dry season. But as you can see, all of that rain, almost all of it, has evaporated from the soil surface. Their river is dry despite the rain just having ended, okay, and we have 150,000 people on almost permanent food aid. Now let's go to our land nearby on the same day with the same rainfall, and look at that. Our river is flowing and healthy and clean, it's fine. The production of grass, shrubs, trees, wildlife, everything is now more productive, and we have virtually no fear of dry years. And we did that by increasing the cattle and goats 400%, planning the grazing to mimic nature and integrate them with all the elephants, buffalo, giraffe, and other animals that we have. This land in Mexico was in terrible condition, and I've had to mark the hill because the change is so profound. I remind you that I'm talking about most of the world's land here that controls our fate. What we are doing globally is causing climate change as much as, I believe, fossil fuels, and maybe more than fossil fuels. But worse than that, it is causing hunger, poverty, violence, social breakdown, and war. And as I am talking to you, millions of men, women, and children are suffering and dying. And if this continues, we are unlikely to be able to stop the climate changing even after we have eliminated the use of fossil fuels. I believe I've shown you how we can work with nature at very low cost to reverse all this. We are already doing so on about 15 million hectares on 5 continents. And people who understand far more about carbon than I do calculate that for illustrative purposes, if we do what I am showing you here, we can take enough carbon out of the atmosphere and safely store it in the grassland soils for thousands of years. And if we just do that on about half the world's grasslands that I've shown you, we can take us back to pre-industrial levels while feeding people. I can think of almost nothing that offers more hope for our planet, for your children, and their children, and all of humanity. Thank you.
Testing, mimic nature. That's the key phrase, mimic nature. There was a guy, Victor, what was it, Schaumburger, thank you. He said, comprehend and copy. So changing gears a little bit, what do you think is our #1 export in the United States? Just shout it out, what do you think? Anybody? Garbage? No. Almost. Almost. Another guess.
Soybeans?
Good guess. Wrong.
Corn?
Corn? Yeah, no. You could say wheat. Now, that's a trick question. I apologize. Our number one export is our soil.
Oh my God.
1.9 billion tons in just 1997, just in the United States. Now, if you put that in a rail car, it will go around the world 7 times. Folks, that's a lot of dirt. That's every year in one country. So erosion and soil exportation happens a lot of different ways. There's water runoff. We have air and sun erosion. Come on. Farming is a big erosive factor. Bare soil. Scientists tell us that we're depleting it faster than we're replenishing it, and that we've got to fix this. Now I want to show you some results. I'm going to get over the doom and gloom part. What I want to show you first is the lowest plateau in China. That shaded area is about the size of France. It was the breadbasket of China for 10,000 years, but through agricultural practices, overgrazing, etc., it became a virtual desert. A project was started in 1995 to restore it using permaculture principles. And this is the result. This is a minute and a half.
When I first filmed Mr. Ta Fuyuan and his colleagues back in 1995, I had no idea this initiative could achieve such dramatic results. The effort that people put into converting their slopes into terraces has resulted in a marked increase in agricultural productivity. The higher yields are directly related to the return of natural vegetation in the surrounding ecological land. Now when it rains, the water no longer runs straight off the slopes. Trapped by the vegetation, it sinks into the ground where it is retained in the soil, taking weeks and months to gently seep down and irrigate the fields and terraces below.
This is a still picture of what you just saw in the video. It was taken the same time of year, September, separated by 14 years. This is, you should recognize this too, same thing, 14 years difference. Again, same thing. Now this is Alan Savory's project, Holistic Management. The area on the right has been untouched for decades. Area on the left has been using cattle. Now, in the United States, we call this mob grazing, and it's being utilized in a lot of different places, and it's restoring the earth, care of the earth. This is that video, one that Alan showed you. Again, the arrow points to the hill. This is a project by Jeff Lawton in Jordan, which is basically a desert. And the picture on the right shows 3 years later. Rapid change. And I want to show you a video of Jeff doing this.
So we went and had a look and we thought, oh no, this is the end of the earth. This is like as hard as you can get. This is hyper arid and it's 10 acres of almost dead flat, completely salted landscape, 400 meters below sea level, the lowest place on earth, 2 kilometers from the Dead Sea, right? To about 2 kilometers where Jesus was christened. We've hardly got any rainfall. We've got temperatures in August that go over 50 degrees. Everybody's farming under plastic strips. Everybody's spray. Everybody's putting synthetic fertilizer on, overgrows with goats, just like maggots eating the flesh off the bone, down to the bones of the country. Literally like maggots, giant maggots eating it to nothing. So we designed up a system that would harvest every single bit of rainwater that fell on it. On 10 acres, there's 1.5 kilometres of swale water harvesting ditch on contour, and when they're full, 1 million litres of water soak into the landscape, and they'll fill quite a few times over a winter. And then we heavily mulched those swales with organic matter, which was trash from organic fields nearby. We put that almost 1/2 metre deep, so we saved that and mulched our swales, which are about 2 metres wide and 1/2 metre deep on the trench. Then we put micro irrigation underneath the mulch. And then on the uphill side of the water harvesting trench, we put nitrogen fixing very hardy pioneer desert trees, which help shade and reduce wind evaporation, and also put nitrogen into the soil and structure the soil for us. And then on the lower side of the trench, we put fruit trees, majoring in date palms as the long-term overstory in the end. And then we put in figs, pomegranates, guavas, mulberries, now some citrus. Within 4 months we had figs 1 metre high with figs on, which is impossible. We've done a course, male and female course, trained up some locals, and we've got a translator who's working for the project. He had his degree in agriculture in the Jordan University, and he got on to his mates and said in the agricultural department, well, you said we couldn't grow figs, we got figs growing and we got figs on them. You better come and test the soil, because no matter what you say, we're either growing in salty soil what we shouldn't be growing, or we've desalted the soil, and we'd like to know what we've done. They came in and the salt levels were dropping, so they became interested. The salt levels were dropping around the swales. They said, you must have washed it through. So you normally put a huge amount of water on and wash the salt through to the lower levels, which just makes the groundwater more salty. In the end, you'll salt it 20 metres deep if you keep doing that, and then it will take 1,000 years to recover. And we used only 1/5 the amount of water. So the water, they thought we'd washed it all through. No, we'd used 1/5. That really got them when they realised how much water we hadn't used. With the same amount of water normally used on that much area, we could have done 50 acres. Originally, people laughed at us because we didn't put straight lines in. We went on contour with these swales. They thought, why don't you put it so you've got a bulldozer, you can flatten the desert, you can straighten. So we want to go on contour because we've got a longer edge and we harvest the water passively. Then we planted more non-fruiting trees than we did fruit trees, so they laughed at us. You're planting unproductive things, more than productive things, what's the point, you know? In soil that won't even grow anything, so, you know. And then we covered all the inside of the swale with a huge amount of mulch, where they scrape all their organic matter off and burn it, like most traditional agriculture. In the middle of winter, we got a funny email saying, we've got a problem. We've got mushrooms growing in the swale. Well, they called it fungus, but when we saw a photograph of it, it was mushrooms, because they'd never seen mushrooms, because they'd never had that much humidity in living history in the soil. And when you open up the mulch, there's all these little animals there, you know, there's little insects, and the soil has come alive. And the fungi net that's underneath the mulch is putting off a waxy substance, which is repelling the salt away from the area. And the decomposition is locking the salt up. And the salt is not gone, it's become inert and insoluble. So we could regreen the Middle East, we could regreen any desert, and we could desalt it at the same time. And if we can do it on an insignificant, flat, little bit of 10 acres of flat desert, if you give us something with catchment, or a wadi, or a canyon, or any of those erosion gullies, we can turn it right around completely. You can fix all the world's problems in a garden. You can solve them all in a garden. You can solve all your pollution problems and all your supply line needs in a garden. Now most people actually today don't actually know that, and that makes most people very insecure.
Kind of hard to wrap your head around the fact that you can solve all the world's problems in a garden, huh? One of the criticisms I've heard about permaculture is, yeah, you can do that on 10 acres, 5 acres, your backyard, but you can't feed the world that way. I mean, you can't produce enough food. We need GMOs. We need massive industrial agriculture. So I want to introduce you to somebody else. His name is Gabe Brown. He's a North Dakota farmer, and he manages 6,000 acres using all permaculture principles. I give you Gabe.
How fitting it is that this event, which is titled Roots to Wings, is taking place here in North Dakota. For the motto of the state of North Dakota is strength through the soil. And that's what I'm going to visit with you about today. It's about our soil resource. Agriculture has been challenged. How do we feed 9 billion people by the year 2050? With today's current production model, we can do that. It is a model with which one tills the soil. It's a model of monoculture production practices. No matter where you go around this great state, there's fields of wheat, fields of corn, fields of soybeans, and many other crops. It's one of livestock which are now in confinement, whether it be poultry housed in poultry houses or beef cattle in a feedlot, for example. However, these practices have come at a cost. They have caused the loss of biodiversity. Healthy native rangeland has hundreds of different species of plants and animals and insects. Monocultures have but very few. This lack of biodiversity has led to the destruction of our soil resource, and that's what I'm going to visit with you about today. I'll share some proof with you, and this is statistics provided by North Dakota State University. In Walsh County, North Dakota, back in 1960, the topsoil was 34 inches deep. In 2014, that topsoil was only 15 inches deep. A stunning 56% loss. The organic matter level on that same soil had gone from over 8% to less than 3% today. Look at the ramifications of that. The soil on your left was a soil that had not been tilled and had not seen monoculture production practices. That's the same soil 17 years later on the right. After 17 years of the production model of tillage and monocultures. It also destroys the pore spaces in the soil. Those pore spaces are critical for the life in the soil, are critical for water infiltration. Because if we don't have soil aggregates, we cannot infiltrate water. I took this photo in a field less than 10 miles from where you're seated today. That shows a half of an inch of rainfall can no longer be infiltrated into the soil profile. If we can't infiltrate water, then what happens? We resort to things such as tile drainage. And you're seeing this all over the central United States today. What happens when we put tile drainage in and we do not have the soil aggregates to hold our soils in place? That soil ends up in the watershed. And unfortunately, along with it goes all the nutrients that may have been applied to those fields. That lack of biodiversity also leads to lower nutrient cycling. If we don't have adequate nutrient cycling, we're going to have to add more and more synthetic fertilizers. Those synthetic fertilizers come at a cost of fossil fuel usage, and they also spur the decline of the soil biology. We need to understand how soil functions. How soil functions is due to that biology, because the plants get their nutrients via the biology. High synthetic fertilizer use also aids in the propagation of weeds. Most weeds love nitrogen. The more synthetic fertilizer we apply, the more weeds we get. If we have increased weed pressure, what do we have to do? spray herbicides. Now, unfortunately, many of those herbicides are chelates. What is a chelate? A chelate binds metals. So any of the metals such as magnesium, manganese, iron, zinc, copper, then become unavailable to the plants. If the plant cannot uptake these micronutrients, it's more prone to disease. Because plants cannot ward off diseases on their own, we need to spray fungicides. Fungicides then are detrimental to what? Soil biology. Because plants are not healthy enough to ward off pests, we then need to do what? We spray pesticides on the crops which are meant for human consumption. Because we spray pesticides, we have a decline in what? The very predator insects which would take care of the pest which we are spraying. We also have a decline in pollinators. You can hardly pick up a paper or a magazine today without reading about the plight of our pollinators. These pollinators are critical in our crop production. The current production model is all about killing, whether it be weeds, a fungus, a pest, our diversity, or our profit. Take a look at these projections just put out by North Dakota State University. There are 2016 projections for some of the major crops in our state. Every one of them projects a negative return. What impact does that have on the quality of life of those producing that crop? But take it a step further. What impact does it have on our schools? Drive around this state of ours and you're going to see a lot of small towns that have fewer and fewer children attending the schools. What effect does that have on our businesses and then on our communities? What effect does the current production model have on our health? Take a look at this. The nutrient densities of the foods that we produce have declined anywhere from 15 to 65% in the last 50 years. This has had many negative consequences. The United States spends more on healthcare than any other developed country in the world. Yet look at this. We lead the world in the incidences of ADD, ADHD, cancer, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, autoimmune diseases, and the list goes on and on. This is not acceptable. It cannot continue. But the good news is there's another way, and I'm going to share that with you. It's nature's way. Look at how nature functions. In nature, there's no mechanical tillage. Yet in our production model, we're tilling the soil. In nature, there's always armor on the soil surface, protecting that soil from wind erosion, water erosion, evaporation. Yet in our production model, the fields lie bare. Nature cycles water very efficiently. It's able to infiltrate into the soil profile, then due to the large amount of organic matter, it's held there for such a time it's needed by plants. By destroying our soil resource, we can no longer infiltrate the water and store it for when it's needed. Nature has living plant root networks. There's things growing all times throughout the growing season. Not that way with production agriculture. So often we hear about the production model that we have today as the conventional model. I would argue that nature's way is the conventional model because it's been around for eons of time. Think of it this way. What did this land look like 400 years ago? You had a lot of diversity. There was diversity of plant species, forbs, grasses, legumes, trees, and then also you had a diversity of animals and insects. And all these work together to build a healthy ecosystem. So there's 5 principles that we must follow in order to follow nature's model. They are, number 1, least amount of mechanical disturbance possible. On my own ranch, we have been 100% zero-till since 1994. We have not tilled the soil at all. The second tenet of soil health is armor on the soil surface. We always have the soil covered. That's a picture of one of our fields following seeding. That field is no longer prone to wind erosion or water erosion because we're keeping armor on the surface. Third tenet of soil health is diversity. My son teaches rangeland management at the local community college. He brought his students out to one of our paddocks. They counted over 140 different species of grasses, forbs, and legumes. Why don't we have that in production agriculture today? On our operation, we're trying to mimic it. These are just some of the cash crops that we grow on our operation. We don't just grow one cash crop, we grow many. Along with that, we do not grow cash crops as monocultures. In the upper left there, that's oats with 3 types of clover grown in it. In the upper right is a very diverse cool season broadleaf mix. The lower left, that's corn with hairy vetch grown in it. The lower right, that's sunflowers with over 19 species of covers grown with it. Tremendous amount of diversity feeding soil biology. We also have orchards on our operation. These orchards, besides providing us with the fruit, we're able to have livestock grazing underneath them, thus stacking enterprises. We have 5 acres of vegetable production, but it's not as monoculture. In between each of those corn rows is rows of peas, beans, squash, zucchini, carrots, pumpkins, and a variety of other species, so that we get the benefit of diversity. Fourth tenet of soil health is living root in the ground as long as possible. You don't have to drive very far around this state to see that there are monocultures growing for only a short period of time, and then the land lays idle. These are just some of the cover crop species which we planted on our operation this past year. We actually planted over 70 different species. From the time the snow melts in the spring until the snow stays in early winter, we have a variety of species growing on our land to feed soil health. We're optimizing solar energy collection because how the system works is we take sunlight through photosynthesis. It makes carbon. That carbon is transferred down to the roots where it's leaked out as root exudates. That's what all the biology feeds on. We need that biology in order to get the nutrients to the plant to nourish animals and people. For you see, if we have healthy soil, we're going to have clean air, clean water, healthy plants, healthy animals, and healthy people. We have to focus on feeding biology. Along with this, then, we're able to feed all of the wildlife that's on our operation. We also feed a myriad of different insects. Insects tend to get a bad rap. We like a wide variety of insects, including all the predator insects which take care of the pests. We want to address our problems through biological means, not through chemical means. Dr. Jonathan Lundgren, one of the world's foremost entomologists, told me this: for every insect species that's a pest, there's 1,700 that are beneficial. Why in production agriculture do we aim at just killing that pest when we should aim at providing habitat for all those beneficials? The reason producers have a pest problem is because of lack of diversity. We need to think biologically. Fifth tenet of a healthy ecosystem is animal impact. On our operation, we run a herd of 350 beef cows. We also grass finish that beef because we know it's healthier, both for us and for the animals. We have a flock of sheep and raise grass finished lamb. We have pastured pork. We have broilers, which are out on pasture. And we have a flock of 750 laying hens, which are also out on pasture. We also have bees. Those bees, besides pollinating our crop, provide us with honey. Here's what we've done on our operation. When we started in 1993 on the left, we had very shallow topsoil, 1.7% organic matter. We could only infiltrate a half of an inch of rainfall per hour. We then went no-till. We started to diversify the cash crop rotation. We noticed an improvement in soil health. From there, we started to add cover crops. Another improvement in soil health. Our organic matter levels rose our infiltration improved. We then started integrating all of these livestock species on top of it. Another marked increase in the health of our soil ecosystem. Now in 2013, we actually have a plot of land which is now over 11% organic matter. The same soils that in 1993 could only infiltrate a half of an inch of rainfall per hour can now infiltrate over 15 inches of rainfall per hour. We've done this without the use of any synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, or fungicides. We've done it by following the principles of nature. This has led to a ranch that is profitable every year, regardless of price. And we do this without taking part in any government subsidies of any kind, whether it be crop insurance, EQIP, CSP, or any other form of government payment. Thus, we are not a burden to society. The stacking of enterprises has allowed us to produce many more nutrient-dense calories of food at a lower cost as compared to the current production model. Yes, we can feed the world, and we can do it in a way that regenerates our resources, thus healing farms, families, and communities. Thank you.
I know this first part kind of focuses on the negative a bit, but you have to know what the negative is before you can recognize the positive. I'm almost done with the first part. I've saved the worst for last, I'm sorry. We have a huge problem, and it's called GMO. And I'm going to show you a short clip here from a video called GMO OMG. Oh my God. Has anybody seen it? You heard of it? Okay, it's on your list that I put on your chair. This is just an interview with Jeremy Seifert, who put out this, and we'll talk a little bit about it afterwards.
Hello everyone. Today we'll be speaking with Jeremy Seifert about a film that is extremely important to watch. All of you should see it immediately. It's called GMO OMG, and it's about genetically modified organisms and basically the conspiracy of chemical companies, which has actually hijacked our food supply. Stay tuned. Filmmaker Jeremy Seifert chronicles his story as a dad on a mission to uncover the truth about genetically modified organisms and how the loss of seed diversity and genetically modified food affects his young children, the health of our planet, and basically our freedom of choice to live healthy lives. Welcome, Jeremy, to the set.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. You were a hard man to get a hold of. We had to shoot here on a Saturday because you were so busy making the rounds. You were on Bill Maher, and everybody's talking to you, hopefully, about this. Hopefully this is getting out there.
Yeah, it's an extremely contentious issue. So there's highly intelligent people on both sides, butting heads in the middle, and I hope this film sparks more conversation.
I just didn't see any reason that there should be any debate other than people trying to squash it who are on the payroll of major chemical companies. Is there really any doubt in anybody's mind that this is not good for us?
I'm not sure. It's hard to judge the hearts of these people. I mean, I think there are probably wonderful souls who work for these giant companies that really don't know what's going on and probably believe the lies and propaganda of the industry, that we need these to feed the world, that it's more sustainable, that Roundup is actually completely safe, all these things. But the studies that the pro-GMO side says, these have been tested more than any other food in the world, they're totally safe. These are industry-funded and industry-affiliated studies.
Short-lived, right? I mean, 3 months, and the study that you revealed towards the end of the film, which we should just straight up mention right here at the top of the show, is this gentleman, this scientist in France. Tell me his name again.
Professor Seralini.
Dr. Gilles-Eric Seralini is professor of molecular biology at the University of Caen and serves as president of the scientific board for the Committee of Independent Research and Information on Genetic Engineering. Seralini set out over 2 years ago to conduct the most thorough toxicological test on the health impacts of Monsanto's Roundup Ready NK603 GMO corn, which was approved in the European Union almost a decade ago after only a 3-month study by Monsanto itself. Seralini's plan was to study it over the full life of a rat, with the aim to predict how humans might be affected by consuming GMOs. Beyond the GMO corn itself, he tested the health effects of Roundup, the most prevalent herbicide in the world, found in our soil, streams, air, rain, and recently in human urine. What Seralini found after 2 years of detailed analysis went beyond his own projections and concerns. His findings erupted throughout Europe.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. So I guess my first question is, as a scientist and as the lead author of this 2-year study, do you think there are implications for human health from GMOs?
Of course, I think there are severe implications for human health due to my research. We have demonstrated clearly that in males, especially, livers and kidneys were reached at a very high level. Kidneys were also rich in females, but females were prone to big mammary tumors.
The first signs of health effects occurred in the 4th and 5th months, results that 3-month studies would have never seen. At 14 months, 10 to 30% of treated females developed tumors. There were no tumors in the control group. At 24 months, 50 to 80% of females had up to 3 tumors per animal. The groups treated with Roundup showed the greatest rates of tumors at 80%. Pituitary glands in females were the second most affected. The androgen and estrogen balance in serum was modified by both the GMO corn and Roundup treatments. In males, the liver, hepatodigestive tract, and kidneys suffered most, and estrogen levels more than doubled in males with the highest Roundup treatment dose.
We've been eating GMOs in some form in the United States for 15 years. So why aren't people walking around with big tumors or obvious health effects in our country? So what would translate 6 months in a rat's life to human years?
2 years of a rat is an entire life. So as tumor arise mostly by the end of the first year and within the second year, so that means at the end of the first part of the life, which is around 30 to 40, and we are surprised to see a lot of breast tumors in women within this part of the life.
Professor Seralini, and he did a 2-year study of rats, and 2 years of a lifespan of a rat is the equivalent of a human life,
right.
Correct?
Yeah.
And so by the end of the first year, they were like 80% of the female rats were having tumors.
Mammary tumors.
Yeah. So there's breast cancer for you, right?
Yeah, he found lots of frightening things. And you know, this was one of the only studies of its kind, and he was looking at the toxicity of not only a type of GMO corn, NK603, that Monsanto makes. He was also looking at that combined with the herbicide Roundup, which Monsanto also makes. So that would be natural because there is residue in the food that we eat. And then he just studied Roundup by itself. And this study, instead of giving everyone pause and, whoa, maybe we should think about this, it was just widely criticized. Within 24 hours of its release, it was shut down by so many scientists, and they said, oh, Seralini is fraudulent. But 191 scientists wrote an open letter to Le Monde, the French newspaper, supporting the study.
That's just a short part of it. You should look at the video. So let's unpack this a little bit. 3 months is roughly equivalent to 15 years in a human life. This has only been around for 18 years now. This is 3 years ago. So that means the children that are 15 now have been eating these things all their life. We're lucky. There wasn't GMOs while we were being raised, and that's the most sensitive time to eat these products is when you're developing. So by the time you're 30 to 40 years old is 1 year in the rat's lifetime, and 80% of the rats showed tumors at that time. Now, consider that There's 30-some countries in Europe that have banned GMOs. However, Bayer, which is located in Germany, is buying out Monsanto as we speak. So, on one end, you've got the company that's making you sick, and on the other end, you've got a company that is going to cure you, supposedly. It's a closed loop. It's frightening. It's absolutely frightening, and it's we haven't hit bottom yet. When these children that are 15 now get to 30 or 40, it is going to be absolutely catastrophic. Okay, end of doom and gloom. But these are some of the products. Your beloved Cheerios, all the way down to your Oreos, are full of GMOs. Tomatoes are GMO now. I didn't know that until just a little while ago. All the bread that you eat, all the oats that you eat, GMO. There's 30-some products that are being grown in the United States now that are GMO. And that's just the health things. The sociological, immoral things that Monsanto does to nations by getting them addicted to sterile seeds is criminal. Yeah, it's supposed to be good, isn't it? Well, if it says organic, if you buy organic, then you're okay. But you must buy organic. It's the only way, and even then, there's infiltration from fields that are next to each other, but you're better off. That wraps up the first part. I promise the next part is all positive and fun, and we'll show what can be done. Okay, so we're going to jump into what does it look like and some practical aspects, not just results. So where do we start? Well, we'll go past the definition and the ethics. Concepts and themes. So, touched on this quite a bit, biodiversity rather than monoculture. More complex the system, the stabler the system. Work with nature rather than against. And here's my comic relief for the second section. The problem is the solution. Anybody ever hear the problem is the solution? Yeah, permaculture people have. Okay, so I'm going to show you an example of the problem is the solution. Now, you might, let's say you have locusts in your fields, or squash beetles in your squash, or potato bugs in your potato bugs. That is the problem. But in that problem, it contains the solution. And I'm going to show you a winery in France that has a unique employee. We have to evaluate. These are Indian runners. They have rudimentary wings, they can't fly. I had 10 Indian runners, they ran away. They found the trick, and there was no getting them back. Quite a solution, huh?
Lured the ducks into the potato patch with some feed, hoping they would discover the potato beetles and like them. And it is just absolutely amazing.
They eat slugs like that too.
Potato beetles, in case you don't know, are a very, very serious pest of potatoes, usually resulting in some serious pesticides being used on them. And potatoes, consequently, are on the dirty dozen for pesticide residues. It's commercial potatoes.
He goes on for about 15 minutes, but you saw the basics there. I don't know if everybody heard. I have ducks. I have 80 ducks, and we're trying to start a duck egg business. And he's lucky that those ducks didn't like potato leaves. I got chased out of my garden by bees, and as I made a mad dash out of the area, I forgot to close the gate. And the ducks check every day, and they got into the garden, and they ate 80 Brussels sprouts, that tall, about 40 cauliflowers. Oh my God, my daughter was devastated. And I mean, it took them 3 hours to do that. I mean, by the time I got over my bee bites and went back to, it was gone. It was just unbelievable. They will eat practically anything. So, and then we originally got ducks because I was told that they were soft on the soil. They don't scratch like chickens. They don't make a big mess like chickens. And that's true. But they eat anything green practically. Okay. Make the least amount of change for the maximum results. Imitate nature. Don't try to overpower her. And there's no limit to what you can do. It's just the imagination of the designer. And we're going to get into that big time. So how do we start? You have to observe what you're dealing with. And that is elements, patterns, and systems. Now, elements, we don't mean the weather. Elements are all the things that you find on your piece of property or your backyard, animals, plants, water, structure. These are elements. This is an example of an element. What is going on here? There it is. A chicken is an element. It has needs, and it has products. And you just have to study your element and maximize it. Another kind of element is your soils. And of course you want good soils, as good as possible. Another element is your terrain, whether you have big hills or whether you have flat ground like Nebraska. Those are all things that you have to consider when you're planting. You got to know your climate classifications, what zone are you in. These are all just basics. I won't spend a lot of time on that. Come on. So, patterns are how the elements interconnect. Now it gets a little more complicated and more interesting, actually. So your interactions, your elements are the plants, the roots, and the microbes, the protozoa, whatever is in the soil, and those two combine together in a symbiotic relationship, and the bacteria feed the plants, and the plants feed the bacteria. They have a barter system. They don't use silver, gold, or dollar bills. Another pattern is the wind patterns and how they affect your land and property and topography. This makes a big difference when you plant something. And Jeff, the elements, the soil and the weather down here and the combination of your soils, I understand, makes it difficult. And so you have to kind of put all those things together. And here is a symbiotic relationship between cows, soil, and chickens. One supports the other and feeds the other. Everybody hear of Joel Salatin? He's a rock star in permaculture. And he's on your list of the handout that I have here. It's got a book. So to start your design, you arbitrarily break it down into 5 different zones. And I'm talking about whether it's a 10-acre piece of property, a 1 acre, your backyard, whatever it is. Zone 1 is where you spend most of your time, and as you go out, you spend less and less time. So the way that would translate into on a garden, it would be something like this. You spend less time in zone 5. I should use my pointer. Out here is wild area, which you go to very seldom. There's fruit trees and things that you visit maybe once every couple of weeks are out here in zone 4. berries that or asparagus or something else that you spend more time with, and etc. But that's not a hard fast rule. That's just guidelines. Right here, this is our little piece of 10-acre property. I don't think that shows up very good, does it? This was my project to get certified in permaculture. I had to design, and this is the house. This is where my daughter lives. We have a big barn that's probably worth $70,000 because of the wood in it. It was built in 1895. It's beautiful. This is where all my ducks are right there, and we've got orchard right through here. Right in here now we have a high tunnel that's 30 feet by 70 feet covered. It's a hoop house basically covered. And then surrounding the whole property we have woods. We got a little stream going through here. And now as of July my son owns the property on this side. So we've got 13 acres corner on the market. But that's just an example. Now I'd like to go into some of the common things that permaculturists like to do. These are various techniques, and the first thing I'd like to talk about is food forests. We're going to talk about guilds and swales, hugel beds, and composting, and this is a very short list of a long list of things that you could do, but these are very common. Now the food forest, before I go into there, I want to throw something out at you. There are no such things as weeds. There's no invasive species. There are no noxious plants. And if you think so, you're a vegetable racist. Vegetable rapist, not rapist, racist. Now you can't see that top one. Every living thing that Baba created has a purpose. And the top square up there is talking about compacted soil. If you have compacted soil for whatever reason, you'll start to see dandelions, which is a noxious plant, right? It's not worth anything. Or you might get comfrey growing in there with a deep taproot. Any plant that grows way down, 4 or 5 feet, will break up that soil, and it has a purpose. Now, if you had crabgrass and stuff like that with hairy roots that spread out, they're trying to re-aggregate soil that has been plowed, for example. And that's why there's so many of those types of things in farmland. They gather with their roots the soil together and bind it so it doesn't erode. Now, if you had burned out property, you have a residue of potassium. And the gardeners like to put that on their garden, but the way Mother Nature tries to heal that soil is to grow ferns. And if you have something that's overcropped and degraded as far as nutrients, the type of plant that will grow there are legumes, which are nitrogen fixtures. They get these little nodules of nitrogen along their roots. There are guys that have studied this, and they can actually go out into your property, and just by what kind of weeds they see, they can tell you what's wrong with your soil. It's a real art form. So forest gardens. When the Pilgrims came here, they thought they came into kind of a desolate, untamed area. They didn't realize that not only the Native Americans, but any Native societies were horticulturists. They didn't plow in straight rows like the Anglo-Saxons did, but they developed food forests, nut trees, in combined with a lot of other things. This last paragraph here, only after prolonged and unprejudicial observation did anthropologists comprehend that virtually every plant near the dwellings was useful in some way. Tall trees were timber, firewood, etc., etc. And later on, some Englishman by the name of Robert Hart, who you know very well, Judy, wrote a book called Forest Gardening. And so that is an ideal in permaculture. What could be better? You don't have to do anything. You just walk out there at a certain time of year and pick it. You don't have to tend to it at all. We'll see some examples of that in just a second. This is a food forest. Looks like a tangled mess, but it's not really. Everything that you see there by design, planted by design. That's in Colorado. And this is what you're looking at. These are some of the things that he includes in that tangled mess, which is very organized. And they all support each other. Biodiversity. Now this is what's called a guild. It's a tree guild, and it's a series of plants planted around a central, in this case I think it's an apple tree. And they might have mulch planes here, you might have nutrient accumulators like chicory, plantain, and you'd have comfrey for deep tap roots, you might have berries in there. And then once you establish something like that, it looks like that. Might be a little hard to get in and get it, but it's a beautiful system. Now you're talking about succession planting. The way Mother Nature tries to repair damaged soil is to start with the pioneer species that do some of the things that the weeds were doing. And then the shrubs will start to grow, then soft pines, and then eventually the hardwoods. And you get this canopy over a period of time. Now this is a series of guilds. Each one of these is a guild like you saw on the apple. And there are different guilds. This one I can't read it, but it could be a nut tree. This could be an apple or a pear. Then you could have a row of bushes. And this is a very small piece of land. It's half an acre maybe. So it's not, you don't have to be a farmer to do this. And in fact, you don't even have to have an acre. And I'll show you a video in a second of a backyard that is just beautiful with its biodiversity. Here's another look at that same type of concept. Now these pictures I got out of this book right here. It's called Gaia's Garden by Toby Hemingway. If you wanted to get started, if you become inspired today, this is the book for you. If you're only going to buy one book. There's many, many books out there, but this one is very complete and well written and well illustrated. And it's on your list. Another picture of how you interplant these things. This is companion gardening. Different root structures take up different spaces, and they benefit each other, they help each other. There are lists like this. I just showed this quickly because I want to show how complete this is. These are different types of plants. They might be a nitrogen fixer. They might accumulate nutrients from down below with long, deep tap roots. But it gives a complete list of what the plant is and what it does for you. What have we got there? There's another chart. This is it's out of order is what it is. Okay, this is the beginning planting of someone's backyard. He's got a swale right in here. He's got different types of bushes and shrubs. He's mulched everything over, and by the end of the year it looked like this. This is Jeff Lawton again, and this is a 5-minute clip about what you can do in your backyard.
So does this look familiar? This is your dead standard, non-productive landscape of humanity. But there's hope. We can convert this into something that's worth achieving and something worth living in. High-density human settlement. The challenge for permaculture? Small space? Wrong aspect? No challenge. We can come up to that challenge. Let's go and have a look at something that's been done really well. And this is something really worth paying attention to, because we have detail here. We have things that really work in small space. Even when aspect and the actual area is something you would think limits the ability of design. The more restrictions, the more limitations you put on the design or a design site, the more creative you become. Opportunities just abound in small space intensity. all kinds of microclimates, all kinds of opportunities. This little space is just a wonderland of permaculture diversity. There's probably the highest density of plant stacking we've seen on any location. This is really urban permaculture in its most extreme expression. We have little ponds, flows of water. The space inside looks at the space outside directly, an infallible technique of making sure everything is attended to because you can see it from your personal inner space of the house. Vertical stacking on walls, trellises, little gardens, edges, pot plants, trees, climbers, herbs, medicinals. The whole thing stacked into very, very small area, very small space, extended micro edge, little pest and predator techniques involved everywhere. It's so tight, but so beautifully intricate and productive. There are so many lessons here. The whole system is a lesson. And we're even up against natural forest, where we have eucalypts around us, allelopathic trees. It doesn't make any difference to this. There's little techniques of fencing to keep out wild birds and possums. There's native bush turkeys here that could potentially get in to the garden. I'll step over a little fence. There's all sorts of micro techniques that are working with the environment, pleasant little signs. Nothing succeeds like excess. All sorts of messages. Let us enjoy each day. Take time to be sage. Funny little sayings. There's a real enjoyment and a pleasure. There's a therapy in this system that's an added benefit to the physical event of gardening. And then you've of course got the productivity. You've got the health. You've got the 0 food miles, 0 food time, 0 food guilt. Therapy in relation to the action and interaction with the environment of growing food right next to the wild environment. Zone 5 is right on the doorstep of Zone Micro 1. This is something that we can learn from. Here is the productivity in the urban landscape that is only taking up 3% in volume area production compared to agriculture. 97% of agriculture is a waste of time, waste of space, waste of energy. This is the productive space, the micro space. Nothing beats the square meter production, energy efficiency of the urban micro space.
This aspect where you're looking now, this faces southwest, which is like the worst possible permaculture aspect.
That can be scaled up or down as you wish. If any of you have ever been out to Judy and Jeff's place, this is what they're doing. Got a year or two to go yet to get that, don't you? Yeah. But it's a labor of love, and it's therapeutic just to be in a place like that. Swales. Swales are really cool. This is how you take care of water problems. A swale is a ditch on contour, as Jeff said several times. The swale is where the water is, and a swale might extend 50 feet in either direction, and then at the end of the swale it'll have a spillover, and it'll go down and you'll dig another swale and collects water even more, and at the end you'll have what the Aussies call a dam at the bottom, which is just a pond, and there you plant your fish, and you put your trees on one side and your fruit on the other side, and away you go. Turn myself off. This is the beginnings of a swale right here. It's on contour, so it's not going to be a straight line. And when it rains, water runs off the hillside and down into the swale and collects. It soaks in on the bottom side here, and you can plant on both sides of it. And you slow down the water before it tries to escape from your property. And you can do a series of those. Now this is Mark Shepard's place. He is about 100 miles from me, one of our rock stars in permaculture that just happens to live in our state. This is a 106-acre farm, and he bought it about 30 years ago, and it was abandoned because it had been farmed for 100 years and it had been run into the ground literally and wasn't worth anything. And what you see here is biodiversity at its best. These are all different things that are cash crops that he's growing, and he is using a technique of swale production to trap water all the way through. There's probably about 20 feet in between each one of these, and these are hazelnuts. He has chestnuts. He has in here, he has asparagus. He has squash, and he just runs it through and through and through. Isn't that beautiful? When you look at it at the ground level, this is kind of what it looks like. It looks like a tangled mess, but it's a very productive area. Again, these are asparagus here, and he has hazelnuts behind it. He runs his pigs through here, and he runs his cattle through there at certain times of the year. In the back, he has Korean stone pine, you know, if you want to make pine nuts. And all these things can be sold on the market. And he doesn't have any bad years. If something fails, something else is growing well. And he says, he has a book on your sheet. His book is called Restoration Agriculture. And he shows you how to transition from being a farm that is conventional into something like this and make money each year as you do it. And he says he outproduces any farm in the area just on money per acre because of the diversity of the things that he's harvesting. There's another picture. I contend that those are the happiest cows on earth. And just look how tall that grass is that cow is walking through. He won't be allowed to stay there for very long though, maybe a day at the most. It's called mob grazing. They'll be moved out into another area. And again, another view of the same thing, with the apple tree in the foreground. And this is his farm also. He's got a series of ponds everywhere. He almost got into trouble because someone discovered he had a certain type of frog there that is endangered. And they said, well, you can't farm this land because you have an endangered species. But he was able to convince him that the reason that frog is there is because of what he was doing. He brought it in. And there aren't any frogs on other properties. And we had some deluge rains last year, and every one of his neighbors were eroded out, rained out, washed out, lost. And this guy barely knew it happened. He just absorbed all the water into the landscape and into the ponds. And the question is, why doesn't everybody do that? I mean, here is a perfect example of a man who's making money, no crop insurance, doesn't need it, doesn't depend on the government, but his neighbors are still doing monoculture, GMOs. I mean, human nature is hard to understand sometimes. This is Jeff Lawton's farm, Zaytuna Farms in Australia, and he's doing the same thing. Okay, hugelkultur. That's German, or Swiss maybe, I don't know.
Hügel.
Say it?
It's Hügel.
Hügel?
It's just a mountain.
Say it loud.
It means a mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a hugel bed, which I'll show you in a bit, but this is the concept. You just take a bunch of logs and trash and wood and bury it with dirt and humus layer, and you mimic nature. Nature grows soil by rotting trees over a long period of time. It breaks down, it becomes very fertile. Funguses grow in there, mushrooms grow in there. It's just the biodiversity. What were you saying? You have termites? Who's calling you? Larry uses termites to break his wood down. So what he should do is he should be getting the chickens in there to harvest the termites afterwards.
Oh, maybe you can lend yours out.
I think there's a business model there, Jeff. Rent out your chickens. I heard a podcast. The guy had a herd of goats, and he had a lawn service for businesses in San Francisco. You heard about that?
No, but
he'd had this electric fence. He'd block off the area, put his goats in there, leave them in there for a day or two, He didn't have to feed his goats, and they paid him to do this. And he would go from business to business to business. That was his business model. Beautiful. I can tell you that this is a lie. You can't do that. I tried that. You just can't get it that steep. And if you can get it that steep, you can't keep anything growing in there because it just washes off. But this, again, is another picture of that same idea. This is Holzer in Austria. And this is a hugel bed that he keeps mulched very well, and he's growing squash in there right now. Squash love hugel beds. Now this is a series of hugel beds. He's got a huge farm. Can you imagine? Each of those are about 60 feet long. And when you have a hugel bed, you increase the growing area because of the going up and down. Yeah. And then you don't have to water nearly as much because it's like rotting wood is like a big sponge. If you've ever walked out in the woods and step on it and how spongy it feels, that's from the rotting wood. So it's a beautiful system. That's my place. Or actually, it's my daughter's place. That's my son-in-law, and that's my daughter. And that's she's not related to me, but my ex-wife's child, and her friend, and my daughter here, and my other daughter here. And what we did is we cut down about 1/3 of an acre, and we sold the logs, and they left the slash, and we piled it up into big piles like this. And this pile is actually 200 feet long. Yeah, 280 feet long. And we couldn't, make a hugel bed out of all of that. It was just too much work. I had a guy come in with an end loader, and he covered it for us. This is a 70-foot hugel bed. And he brought me dirt. He didn't bring me any soil. So this is what he was doing for us. So, and we found out that we couldn't grow on that. I mean, all the seeds ended up down here. And you have little torrents and rivulets of canyons, miniature canyons forming in there. It was a disaster. So we decided we had to terrace it. This is my son right here, and he took on the project. And we just used lumber that we found out in the woods and just stacked it up there. And this is what the ducks ate. And here's a couple. And this is when I only had 10 ducks. I call them the supervisors. But this is actually the year before the ducks destroyed our hugel bed. That's my son-in-law, I mean my grandson. He helped me build compost all year. Now this is a reverse hugel bed. And it makes more sense. I don't think I'm going to develop the rest of that slash that we piled up because it was just so much work to terrace everything and then to try to get compost on top of a terraced area. Oh, it's a nightmare. But this is easy. We just took the logs, buried them 3-4 feet down, and we're growing. That was a single row right here, and we doubled that, and so we have a nice garden in here. And then we did the same thing back up in here. So I heard a guy say once. This was Mark Shepard. He said, "There's no mistakes. There's just feedback." All right. So composting. This is how I do my compost, and you can see the hugel bed is in the process of getting compost. But these bins are 5 feet tall and 8 feet across. And I have landscapers deliver me grass clippings, and in the fall I go around with my white trailer and I pick up bags of leaves. I have a shed full of leaves right now waiting for spring when I can start. Now what you do is it's like making a lasagna. You put down a 4 to 6 inch layer of grass clippings, and then 4 to 6 inches of leaves that are all ground up, and then manure if you've got it, and then start over. Grass, leaves, manure, grass, leaves, manure, and you just keep going. It takes me probably 2 weeks to fill that up with the guys delivering stuff to me every day. And you water it as you make the layers, and then you turn it about every 2 weeks, and if you are very vigilant, you can create soil in about 6 to 8 weeks. This year I made 25 yards, and that's a lot of dirt, folks. Soil. Thank you. Any questions about composting? You know, the way I like to compost now that I think is actually even better is just composting in place. You know, you've got your garden going, just throw all your stuff down in the garden and you don't have to bother putting it in a bin. You know, we did it that way because we needed so much. And so you have to go the extra mile that way. Compost tea is another thing that's really good. You basically take compost, put it in a bag right here, dangle it in a trash can of water, put a aerator down in there. You can see this right here. It's got holes in it, and you just pump air through it, and you bubble it for about a week, and it becomes very fertile stuff. You can put it on externally. You can put it on the soil. And actually, we built a miniature one of these as an egg cleaner. So you put it in a small 5-gallon bucket, and you put your eggs in there, and you just turn it on. 10 minutes later, ducks are very messy. They have constant diarrhea, you know. When they poop, it's a liquid, so they make messes. So that's another thing. This is this is my favorite video, and I like to call this "How a Permaculturist Thinks." And he's going to show you how they designed a 5-acre piece of property over about a 5-year period of time. And then we'll wrap it up.
Property, in its original form, originally just a 5-acre property, and then it got extended out to 148 acres and had it still has 48 dams and 6 kilometers of swales and very, very complex broad landscape. But Bill started on a 5-acre block of land, and a very ordinary block of land. Ordinary in that it was just a straight rectangle, had a road on the bottom. This was the sun side, so in the southern hemisphere, north was down this way. So east is over here, and the sun would track around the property like this. So west over on this side, east over on this side. And when you look at the property in its original form, had a house, 2-story house, about a third of the way up the block, and a driveway that came straight in. And it was just a straight paddock, grass field. When you look sideways, it was just a hill, probably not quite that steep. Just a straight hill, 5 acres, and a 2-story house in the middle. About a third of the way up the block. So I ended up living on this property for 3.5 years. As he looked at this, said, okay, we don't have any features. We need to put some features in. We could put a dam at the top of the property, but it won't have a lot of catchment. So it won't catch a lot of water up there because it's a straight slope. It only catches the water from above, from the farm next door, and doesn't really easily fill up there. So we've got a dam wall around this, and we can excavate the material to make the little dam pond, but we'll have to run out on contour, on level, a catchment system in earthworks called a swale, which will also soak water into the landscape and catch it back to the dam. And then we can set that up so that it'll hold water, a certain amount of water, when the dam's full. That will catch back this way to the dam, and it will catch all this extra runoff from upslope, which was just another grazing property, which ended up being part of the institute in the end. But it would run back and it would fill this dam, and when the dam was full, it would back flood up the same swell line until there was a foot of water, about 300 millimeters of water, sitting in that long swell and soaking into the landscape through the soft mound, And then if more water kept arriving, it'd overflow and go down the slope. So we're trapping water like energy, because water's full of life, and it builds soil over a period of time to grow trees very easily. So we could recover that landscape in trees. So we could plant trees along there, and they could be fertilizing trees. And there would be a dampened soil hydrology just below that swell, so you get a nice line of trees in there, and after some trees that improve the ground and create nice nitrogen-rich fertilizing mulch, you could also have fruit trees or any type of production you want. You could have timber trees, forage trees, bee forage, fungi forest, your choice, doesn't really matter. But then we've got plenty of room, so we may as well pick another dam up, pick another dam here in the landscape, and we could fill that. But also we need a swale along there. And we could repeat it in the other way, in the other direction. And we'll put a little level sill there too. And the same thing would happen. We're getting runoff between the dams. We're getting overflow from that dam in large rains. It's going in both directions. When it's full, it's overflowing, it's coming down this way. We've got another nice, stable, soil creating system, water and forest now. Diversity of trees, productive by our choice of elements. Now, there's still room. So there was room to put another dam in. Now we've got a house. And we really don't want the house to get too wet in the subsoil there, and we don't want any surface water. So we're actually going the other way now. We'll put earth bank up there. That's a hard earth bank. And if there's any surface water, it's displaced away from the house. And there was room to put in another pond. And it's getting bigger again. And now we can put another swale in, going across on contact, and we could take that underneath the driveway and come out the other side. When the water gets full in the dam, it backs up and goes over the overflow there next to the driveway. This allowed us to build one final dam. Quite a nice fish pond dam here. Rich in life, same height it overflowed here. And here it went underneath the road and sink off the property. But there's also this movement of water that we could, at any point in here, we could put in an animal system. We could put an animal system at the top if it was convenient. So we could put any type of animals, chickens, ducks, geese, mostly small animals on a small acreage. Animal system have manure. So we have a manure input. So now there's a natural flow, apart from everything else that animals might produce and functions they might perform, there's an animal manure flow downhill. And that then hits that swale and gets spread evenly like a manure tea, which builds extra fertility in the ground. It's only a certain amount, but it's an additive, it's an extra. So you then get better growth. That then spreads further down, that then spreads further down. So what you've got is a nutrient flow coming through the property, and it's not that it's a, don't think of it as an oversupply now. We're not pushing it towards a massive input. It's just a small input that increases life potential. It's a fertility input that will be taken up by the diversity of life, because you've got all these interactions. So that life diversity interaction input is absorbed by the system. You've got a sink. In the end, some of that manure nutrient, some of that life-rich potential It's flowing off the property here. This is a sink. You can't ever trap it all. But you could just here put in a little pond, and you could fill that little pond. So right at the bottom of the property, you could put in a little pond. We've got our dams here, our dams here, with a dam and swell here, and a dam and swell here, and a dam and swell here. We've got little water traps all the way through, a little water trap. We've got a soak and a trap, soak and a trap, soak and a trap, soak and a trap all the way through. We've got bands of vegetation all the way down the hill. We've still got area in between, but they're really fertile because they've got a lot of forest interaction. And right at the bottom, we've still got a sink. But if we just fill that up with gravel, and it's going to be damp because it's at the bottom of the system, and we plant it to reeds, reeds are natural filters. They're part of those shallow marine systems, those marshes, those shallow water systems, those shallow lakes and ponds and marshes, wetlands. They naturally trap. If you look at the bodies of reeds above the water, their bodies are up above, their roots are anaerobic and they're down below the water, and they're natural filters. So as the water comes through, as it goes through the roots, they pick up nutrient, they pick up sediment, they pick up all kinds of elements into their bodies. That's what they do. That's what these natural systems do. That's why we use them on grey water cleaning. That's how biological cleaning systems mostly work with plants. They're all these wetland plants. The reeds, there's a classic set of global genus of reeds. Now, they'll pick that up, some of it. They won't pick up all the water, they'll pick up a lot of the nutrient, and eventually they'll clog that reed bed. That reed bed will get completely clogged. There won't be room in there for any more reeds, and the roots will totally take up the area. So your little reed bed here that you've just designed in as a nutrient trap, it's going to end up absolutely dominated by reeds. And the roots, if the more nutrient there is, the thicker they'll grow. But at that point, you're on site, you're in observation. You can move in and choose that timing. Now we're getting the time into it. You've got a time observation point here. You say, oh, the reed bed's clogged. The water's just hardly going through the gravel anymore. Let's pull a load of that out. Let's take half of that out, or more than half, because they grow quite quick. Let's grab those reeds. Let's grab that. Let's grab that. Let's take it up there. Let's grab this here. There's an opportunity here. There's a niche in time. Your niche, that empty, you created an opportunity. This opportunity was an open system. You put an element in there that does a job. You took out half of it and brought it back, and let's say you put it in the animal house up here, or let's say you mulch some fruit trees here, or anywhere you can bring it back into the system. You can put it back higher up in the energy flow. Now, it may not seem like a lot, because I tried to give you a simple example.
That's how permaculture thinks and plans and designs. Elegant, isn't it? Just elegant. This was taken 3 years ago. This is a number of permaculture sites. Permaculture is a grassroots movement. This was 3 years ago. I redid that this year. The numbers have tripled in 3 years. The East Coast had something like 300 sites. These are just guys like me that have registered and now it's 900. 500 here, 400 here, all throughout the world. It's a movement, and it's gaining steam. It's a new paradigm. Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they fight you, and then you win. And right now, we're in the ignore you phase. But this new paradigm, I firmly believe, is Baba's gift to humanity. This is how we're going to rise from the ashes when everything comes crashing down, which Baba has said it will. Most therapeutic and defiant act you can do, plus you get strawberries. That's Ron Finley. He's a self-proclaimed urban gardener in Los Angeles. Grows his food in empty lots and on medians. And that is the end.